podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another end of season edition of the Cardiff Central Podcast. As ever, I'm Harley in the hot seat. I am joined by Dan. How are you doing, Dan?
Oh, good, cheers.
An unfamiliar, familiar face. Carwyn's back from his holidays. Hope you had a good time, bud.
Yeah, great time, actually. So good that it was very difficult to come back, to be fair. Partly due to Nice Airport being an absolute disaster, but that's another point entirely.
I blacked out the last time I used Nice Airport for my mind. It was that harrowing a tale. But also, we do have a fourth chair occupied tonight. So we have the absolutely fantastic guru of all things Portuguese and European rugby, Francisco Isaac. How are you doing, Francisco?
Jesus, what a compliment to start. Harley, if you're trying to initiate me in some type of cult, I might be interested, because if you compliment me like that every day, I will gladly join your cult. Well, I joined the cult because called Cardiff, and it doesn't bring good news most weeks. So thank you for that, Harley. Thank you.
Yeah. So part of the reason Francisco's on is at the start of the season, he was asking which Welsh side should I support in the URC, and for some reason he trusted me when I said, "Oh, you should support Cardiff," because it'll be great. So first of all, public apology for putting you through all that half take. I feel like you've got to be a seasoned Cardiff fan to have put up with the season we had, but hopefully, through a bit of group therapy now, hopefully we're going to talk about how the season probably wasn't all that bad despite the results. So no one's going to jump in and help me with that one, right?
You want me to jump in? You want me?
Well, I was hoping someone would jump in.
You want me to start from the bottom or from the start? Because if we start from the start, why the Dragons and the other Welsh teams are hiring so many good players, and Cardiff is just like, okay, we're happy with the team. We lost Thomas Williams, Rhys Carey, Elliot Jenkins, Owen Lane, Kieran Parker, Lopeti Tamani, Willis Halloho. We lost all them, but it's going to be fine. Why, Harley? Why?
It's going to be fine because we've re-signed Ben, the wonder kid, Ben Thomas, Big Mac, Domachowski's still there, Azarati's still there. We've kept Rhys Litterick. A new signing is being announced as we speak. There's definitely plenty of positives to take on from the year. And also, you've got to appreciate Cardiff are promoting from within. We're truly embracing our regional, our pathways. So, it's going to get better.
It's really hard to take you seriously with that T-shirt on. I've just realised you said all that, this inspirational talk, and you just got sarcasm across your chest. It's like,
yeah. So maybe I have to put a photo out of this for the audio-only listeners, because yes, I did realise the irony of my wardrobe choice as I was trying to be the sensible and optimistic one, not sounding like the sarcastic git I usually am. Dan, maybe you should. Dan, you've been one of the more positive voices for the last few weeks. Do you want to come and save my ass here?
Well, I don't want. Are we just going into the season as a whole? Is that what?
Yeah, I think let's talk. I mean, do you want to? Should we just quickly rattle off the results?
Well, I think the season starts with the context of last summer, and if you take almost exactly 12 months ago, we are no director of rugby, or he's suspended still at the time of chatting 12 months ago. It's 8 players in pre-season training with just Jockey and Richie Reese, which is, I don't even know what drills you can do with 8 players. Is 4-a-side rugby a thing? I don't know. But if it was, we were making it a thing. And we had a number of players who we wanted to recontract but couldn't. We had a number of players who we were half in negotiations with for signing, but we didn't know if there was money there. So against that backdrop, to go from that in June to August Dai Young leaves, Matt Sherritt comes in, we start announcing a few people. Gethin Jenkins comes in as a part-time defence coach. Scott Andrews is promoted from the academy to the first team as his first ever senior professional coaching job, having only retired from semi-pro rugby about 2 weeks before. That is the context against which everything is set when you discuss Cardiff season, I think. So you can look in a very binary results way, and on that level, there's value in saying that it wasn't a good season, and we'll discuss the results as we go. But I think when you're talking about 2023-24 from a Cardiff perspective, it starts from the lowest base imaginable. I mean, the only way you can start lower is basically if you just created a new club, essentially, last summer, because that's pretty much where we were come mid-August. So that, I think, from that point of view, you can only look up when you look at the season then and look at the results that came from October onwards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I remember go all the way back to when we started this pod. I think that we're looking at the first game of the season. And I said, what a huge game that was against Benetton. And I still think it was a huge game. I still think there's part of me that still thinks if that domino would have fallen the right way from a Cardiff perspective, a couple of more results go their way as well. I think not, it's perhaps simplistic to say, but it was so indicative of what was to come for the rest of the season, is that it was 30 minutes of brilliant rugby where Cardiff didn't take their opportunities, followed by probably 10-minute spell in the second half where everyone lost their heads, and then just getting pipped at the end through a mix of things. That game was obviously the red card that happened and things like that, but that wasn't where the game was lost. It was lost in the first half, as were many games in the season, I think. And I really do think it just maps out majority, Boxing Day apart and a couple of others, but the majority of the season is that first game of what happened, when it happened, how it happened, and maybe in some aspects, lessons weren't learned quick enough that perhaps needed to be throughout the season.
Yeah, I think that's fairly fair thing. As you said, the Benetton game did definitely set a tone for our season. We started and ended the season with a bonus point, a losing bonus point loss with a red card at the end, towards the latter stages. And actually we ended up the worst team for red cards with 5 overall. Probably not our bright discipline, not being our brightest spot. But I am going to give Francisco a challenge. So one of the listeners has said, so friend of the pod, Andrew Ford, did ask, are we likely to see you on the terraces for next season? And also, if you could pick for one highlight, one good thing before you tell me what a terrible human I am for making you support Cardiff, what would your highlight, or what would be the best thing about the good points of Cardiff be for you?
The good points of being a Cardiff fan. Well, let's go to 29th of October. I have here in my notes, it was a game against the Dragons. And, at the time, I thought that the Dragons weren't that bad. I think the next season they're going to do well. So, and it was great seeing. I was very into that game. It was almost 20 something days after the last Portugal's game in the World Cup. So I went down, and that Cardiff game brought me up because it was good, it was intense, it was scrappy, it was ugly. So it's a fairly good Six Nations Wales game of 2019 Gatland. It's the same. It was the same with the Dragons. I think they had a penalty kick at the 70th minute. They scored, so everyone got really stressed when they lose this game. I was saying to Harley, is Cardiff going to lose? Is Cardiff going to lose again? Am I supporting the Welsh Zebra or something like that? Please tell me it isn't. And it ended being a good game and a good win against one of the most heated rivals. But I do think that Cardiff has potential, and as everything in the Welsh Rugby, the problem is, the investing and the structure and the project to the future, which is something that hinders most. And I'm not going to do a T2 talk, but it's what normally happens with nations that are struggling. And I think there's good kids like Mason Grady, which, well, it's normal that everyone jumped in because he's a really, really good player. But listen, after that, it it was just it just was a fire, a massive dumpster fire. Like uh, at some point I stopped watching and refocus everything I had in the party there. And every time I went to see Cardiff, I normally do this with the teams I like is I don't see the beginning of the game. I turn off Wi-Fi or block everything that is linked to that match. And when it's second half, when I think it's second half, mid second half, I turn in just to see if everything's going all right. And every time with Cardiff, it was like, and I was like, hey, shit, Harley, shit. Sorry for the cursing, but this was like, because there's promise and it was intensity, and from some reason, it all breaks for Cardiff. Even if in the end, it seems they're fighting for a win, it's not fighting for a win. They're chasing to flee from certain defeat, and that's the thing that has to change for the future in Cardiff. They have to escape that mindset of we can't lose to we have to win. And even if it is a hard game, because, well, if they want to spell a new era of, well, I'm not saying to go to win the URC because that is hard. Well, until Leinster can go away or go to another country like Greenland or Iceland or something, and we can block the Bulls from playing in the URC. I think Cardiff has to rebuild and to believe, but that's why I'm worried with the signings, because summer for me it's football signings and rugby signings, and I'm not seeing Cardiff moving. But sorry, this is a monologue, and to reply to Andrew, I hope I can go to Arms Park next season. I have to go to the Pro D2 for at least 2 games, get drunk in wine and beer, and then fly to Cardiff to not get drunk with beer because it's very expensive. Well, if Harley has beer at his home, I'll get drunk at Harley's home. If not, just a small beer and something to eat. But I want to go to Cardiff to watch game.
Yep, excellent. I said, depending on my living situation, I'm sure like have a fridge full of beer and a bed for you if you need it. If not, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there
you're already chasing excuses. You have to stop with this. You have to stop. It's this and the dad jokes. You have already a dad joke shirt. Stop it, Harley. You have a disease.
I mean, it's not an excuse. I'm currently living at my mum's.
Well, that doesn't help you. That doesn't help you.
No, it really doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah, choice of having to work at 200 miles away from your family. Anyway, so would you, Dan, Colin, do you two want to counter anything Francisco said or add to?
Counter simply, if he thinks Dragons Cardiff is a good game, then I could be like, no, I can only imagine how Francisco was feeling during the World Cup watching Portugal. But there's there's been so much promise. That word that Francisco said about promise, I think that's the big one. And there's been so much positivity and promise around the team, and it's just been moments of, there were periods just before Christmas where Harley and I were getting frustrated and we're trying to hold it back. I don't think we did successfully. I remember a certain comment criticizing us for being too negative, which was very apt. But I think it was just a time where it was difficult to react to a result where you could see, right, I can see that combination Thomas or Bevan with De Beer working. I can see De Beer, Ben Thomas flourishing. And you look at the end of the season, how that's flourished, particularly the 10-12 combination. But then other areas of the game, seeing games out, perhaps discipline late on in games, that know how to see out a game, that was lacking, and it was just the same repeated things. I never looked at it and thought, oh, this is a disaster. That's probably but maybe I was looking over a little bit east and west and thinking that it was okay in comparison. But I think I think it was just one of those situations where it could have been so much greater the season, but it didn't quite live up to what it possibly could have been. I think, but I'm sure Dan will say, coming back to Dan's original point, say that from where they were, to get to where they ended up with 4 wins was actually quite an achievement.
Yeah, I think there's some stats which I was looking at this week, which sort of frame what Caroline and Francisco just said about the promise element of it. We had 8 players, 23 or under, play 12 or more times this season. And if so it's Evan Daniel, Evan Lloyd, Alex Mann, Mackenzie Martin, Cam Winnett, Jacob Beetham, Mason Grady, and Teddy Williams. And 7 of those, so all but Evan Daniel, did it whilst being involved in either one or both of Wales's Six Nations and Summer International squads as well. So they've come in. I think of those, you'd say, I'd probably say only Teddy Williams was a real established first 23 player. Mason Grady was there or thereabouts towards the back end of last season, but in terms of a season long of being in the first team, only Teddy had done that before. And they've immediately gone in and gone straight on to Wales international honours. So you can see the promise of those players and the potential of them. And then the other stat is 18 URC games and 10 losing bonus points, which is, I mean, that shows then, to Francisco's point about the mindset of the team. You can be positive, I think, about a lot of it, but if you get stuck in this rut of constantly being the nearly men and losing and you don't develop that winning mentality, all this positivity and base building will have been for nothing eventually. So yeah, there was a lot to like. A lot of those nearly games were our own fault as well. We mentioned Kieran Parker's red card against Benetton, Ellis Jenkins's red card against Scarlets. I'm confident that we beat them at home without that. I mean, we nearly did, even with it, and that was a good 60 minutes.
Lilo Connacht again.
Yeah, Lilo and
Same
Connacht as
thing.
well. Yeah. Couple of occasions, Zebra away. It was a draw, so it doesn't quite fit into the stats, but we failed to manage the last sort of 15 minutes of that game, ended up stuck on our own try line for a long, long period before they finally scored to draw it. So yeah, I think the season was never going to be defined as a success or otherwise by the results. I think Jockey was really clear at the start of the season of, we're not going to be in the playoffs. If anyone thought we were going to be in the playoffs at the start of the year, then I mean, they should commit themselves to some sort of institution or something, because we weren't going to be there. But the success was, are we a better team at this point now talking than we were in October? And I would argue in probably the majority of aspects of our play, yes. Like we're definitely a better defensive outfit now than we were at the start of the season. Our line out is a lot better than it was at the start of the season. The scrum has stayed at a relative level, but I don't think we're ever going to be a big scrummaging team. We're not massive as a pack or as a squad. So the scrum is a means to an end in terms of just restarting play for our backs, really. And then attacking wise is probably the question mark you'd have overall. But I think a lot of that question mark comes down to pre-Six Nations, Thomas Williams was our best player. He was the best player in the squad. During the Six Nations, he was probably Wales's best player then as well in a lot of time. And then where he gets injured right to the end of that Italy game, we effectively have to learn how to attack again without him there, and doing it with Bevan at 9. And not a slight on Bevan, but he's not Thomas Williams. And I mentioned it last week, he's got called up for the Wales squad, which is great. He's going to be a good player, but Thomas is, I would say, there's a generational talent there in what he offers teams that he plays in. And so the attack, I think, has probably it's gone up towards the Six Nations. It's then dipped again post Six Nations. But after that Judgment Day game is starting to come up again as we learn to attack without Thomas at 9 again. So overall, yeah, I think you have to be pretty happy in the wider context. But this season will look much better if we get to next Christmas with sort of 4 or 5 wins through October, November, December time. Whereas if we get to next, big time, fingers crossed. But if we get there and we're still, the losing bonus point blokes, then it's not looking as good overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I said we sort of hinted on though, I think for next season, one thing that will need to improve is is like the discipline side of things, which I think a lot of issues probably comes from a lot of new combinations, a lot of players not really gelling. Actually, for scrum, we finished regular season with the second best scrum. But I think that's more due because of how they rank sort of thing. So we only won the 7th most scrum penalties, so it's still top half. But our actual scrum percentage on own balls quite high, which is promising. It's not rare that we're losing the ball when we're at the back of the scrum. So that's better. Carol, when you mentioned about sort of like the cohesion, and Dan, you sort of alluded to it as well as our attacks building up. So we got asked on the Twitter by Charlie Hunt, basically because we've got a new attack and a new forwards coach coming in. Do you think performances are going to see a bit of a dip as these coaches stamp their authority, or do you think we'll still be able to continue up from where I am? I feel like from an attacking point, my understanding is the new guy is there more to develop individual skills, and Matt Sherritt's taking the overall attacking structure. So hopefully that's going to carry on up. But what do we all think?
Yeah, I to be honest, it'll be an interesting one, because we're going back to something that Dan said about being a better side at the end of the season compared to the start of the season. Some of that was bound to happen, and I mean that in the sense of these players hadn't played together at the start of the season. By the end, they played a full season together. So if they hadn't improved, something's gone drastically wrong. Like if they hadn't improved working together. But I also think individually, you look at individuals within that system. Ben Thomas, massive improvement this season. He's taken strides forward. Cam, obviously. Alex Mann, obviously. Mason Grady, likewise. But there's players within that. Ellis Bevan, another one. And I know Dan said that he's not Thomas, but for a largely backup 9 this season, he's been very, very good and has drastically improved. I think the interesting thing will be next season when you say about a new attacks coach coming in. And I do think it'll be Jockey running the attack. Really, it'll be a case of can they then progress further rather than stagnate to some extent, where they've now all learned to play together, now all learned the systems, now all understand it. They go, okay, get to that level, and then they hit a bar and they can't improve further. They still need to improve and get levels ahead of that. Partly that'll be interesting and it'll be disrupted by Callum Sheedy coming back in as to when he comes back in, because obviously he's probably going to miss the start of next season, which has 2 sides to it. It probably helps a little bit at the start of the season with the continuity of your Tinas at Bevan Tinas and Thomas axis, but then moving forward, whenever Callum does come in, which I'm sure he will, how is he going to integrate into that team? Because it's probably going to take him a bit of time to understand the players around him and things like that. And then also some other new signings that we expect to see. I personally think there will be growth next season, but I do think that the team needs to win a close one early on as well. Just to stop that tag of being the Nearly Boys and get that monkey off the back, then win another one. And if they can get on a roll, which would be a nice start, to get two, ideally 3 on the bounce at some stage early in the season, then, well, it could be a successful season. Possibly not playoffs, but it could be. I'll take that back. Probably not playoffs, actually. I was way too positive for me.
Already dreaming.
As you sort of alluded to with the signing, shall we just talk about a couple of the new ones that have happened this week and the ones the one that's been announced on air? So obviously Callum Sheedy has signed. He's sort of returned home. Our academy's been strengthened up with the likes of Tom Bowen and Stefan Emmanuel, who's congratulations, Stefan, on being called up to the under 20 squad. Steph Thomas has done an article reviewing him if on Wales Online, if anyone wants to read that. Otherwise, coming in, we've got some some experienced campaigners in Ed Byrne from Leinster. Said recently just announced Dan Thomas. Dan, do you want to talk through how you think the squad's shaping up?
Yeah, I think Jockey was quite clear when he came on with us the other week. Well, probably about a month ago now, isn't it? About time flies when you're having fun as a Cardiff fan. But he was quite clear about the type of player that he wanted in terms of playing style, but also in terms of what they can offer the culture and the squad off the field. And I think if you look at the recruitment, there's a clear line that it follows there. Ali mentioned Ed Byrne, Leinster, the terminal almost winning machine. Like they sort of get to semi-finals, but we'll take a semi-final. I'll lose in a semi-final quite happily next season. But that he's come from that environment. We've got Callum Sheedy is coming from Bristol, which Pat Lamb's got a good environment there. Danny Southworth from Exeter, where he's worked under Rob Baxter for a couple of years, another good coach, good environment. But the ones this week, then you've got Rory Jennings, who, as a player, is an obvious backup to Ben Thomas as a can cover 10, primarily a 12, good talker, good carrier, good solid defensively, is a goal kicker and a footballer as well. He's started out at Bath, which we've picked up a couple of guys who've come through there now. Gabe Hamer-Webb, another one. He's gone around the houses a bit, got good experience from multiple places, load of championship clubs, but like the ambitious championship clubs, your Ealings, your Jersey when they were still going. He's been to Claremont for 6-7 months, which isn't a bad place to play your rugby for a bit. London Irish, don't disagree with all their off-field stuff, but as a core squad, they had some pretty experienced guys in there. A lot of top Australian international Southern Hemisphere guys. Agustin Cravey from Argentina, and then he's been at Newcastle, which is interesting that we've picked up him and Ewan Stevens from there because obviously they've been not successful on the pitch. Is an understatement, I think, to say how their season's gone, but. They've worked under some interesting coaches. Somebody like, Steve Diamond is very much a Marmite figure in terms of how people take him. But I think a lot of players are probably better for experiencing that sort of thing under Diamond, where he's very tough, and if you come out the other side of that, I think a lot of players do tend to then kick on after working under Diamond. If you carry on, obviously some people have crumbled, but Jennings is somebody who's played a lot for Newcastle this season, has looked good in a poor team, and now comes in as a more experienced player in a squad that has lost a lot of experience now. I think obviously you can talk about signings, but it's remiss not to mention Turnbull, Ellis Jenkins, Thomas Williams, Rhys Carey, Willis Halaholo. That's hundreds of Cardiff appearances. That's a lot of international caps. It's a lot of years in the game that are gone. So Ed Byrne, Jennings. This evening now, as we record in, we've announced Dan Thomas from Bristol at open side. Again, coming from Bristol, good setup. Has been in the game a long time. He's 30 now, so he's not old. He's still a high quality operator, but he has got plenty of experience, and he will come in naturally as a leader within that squad then. And just the other thing I'd say about the signings is that it's interesting how he's sort of knitting players together. So Sheedy and Thomas come together from Bristol. I had a quick look, and Dan Thomas would have been at Gloucester the same time Thomas Young had a short stint there. Then you've got Stevens and Jennings coming down together from Newcastle. So it's interesting to see with Jennings as well, then, who will have played with Ben Donnell at London Irish as well. So they're not coming into totally new environments. I think probably at the moment, obviously Sheedy will know a lot of the boys from the Wales camp and from growing up in the area. So it's probably only Southworth who comes in as not knowing anyone. Well, yeah, but I think
he knows he's played against a fair few.
He's experienced enough to just come in as a leader as well. Ed Byrne, he's been in the Ireland squad, he's been around the Leinster camp, but I don't think he'll come in and will struggle to chat to people. I think he'll be somebody who'll come straight in as a key member of that squad. So it's building nicely. We do have probably 3 or 4 more signings that we need. A couple of 9s would be nice, so that Ellis Bevan doesn't have to play by himself for the entire year. But yeah, it's been interesting to see, because there was a bit of chat on Twitter last night about when Jennings was signed, about is he underwhelming, or is it the type of signing you get excited for? And no, it's not. No one's excited. With the greatest respect to Rory Jennings, we're not gonna go parading him with his shirt through town. Like, great, we signed Rory Jennings, but it's a smart signing, and that's where we are now. We're not signing big players anymore. We're not even signing, we're not going to sign the Halaholo from Super Rugby who's starting for the Hurricanes or whatever. We're looking for these players who can provide value where others don't see them, and that's on paper, at least, because that's all we can judge them on for now. Every signing seems to do that.
I'm glad you sort of led on, because this is going to lead really nicely on to what I wanted to ask Francisco next. So obviously you've mentioned we've got a couple of, we need some scrum halves. I think a lot of people would like a couple more second rows. So Francisco, you've been glued to the Pro D2 and Rugby Europe Championship and the Super Rugby Europe. Now, probably some of those top players there, when we're probably not going to get our hands on, but with our budget constraints. But are there any diamonds in the rough who you reckon could come to Cardiff and do an absolutely fantastic job, and become the next cult heroes?
Well, I think they are diamonds or players that would suit up nicely with Cardiff. But I think first we have to try to understand if Cardiff is like a Moneyball team, which I think it isn't. And until we have a clear view of what Cardiff wants to be for the next 3 years, because when I got into Cardiff, and sorry for this prologue, I started to try to get my bearings about it, and from what in the Wikipedia page, sorry, I have to say this because I don't know, it might have been one of you gits writing this, because it's just funny, this part of Wikipedia, so you understand where I'm heading. Wait, where it is, the Champions Cup Misfits. This part is just funny. Look, whoever wrote this is an excellent writer, and look, it's incredible because you all hear the experiential story, but when you see it, this is Cardiff all around, and it was because of the COVID Omicron variant at the time, etc. But it seems Cardiff never finds a structure inside the team. I think that's the most important part, because you could bring Luka Matkava, who plays for the Black Lion and the Georgians. You are not going to bring him now because he's going to the. I think he's going to the Pro D2. I was not going to spoil anything, the fun for everyone. But there's all the players like Luka Ivanashvili, who is for me one of the best, youngest, 22 years old loose forwards, because you need physicality, and I think that was something that I missed. That you might be completely against my opinion, but Cardiff's physicality is not up there for the whole game. It's in periods of time, and you can't win. Maybe that's a reason, because there's red cards, because at some point someone gets fed up and tries to, I'm going to draw the line here with massive tackle, and then goes to the head, red card. And this is not Super Rugby, so you're not allowed to do that. And after 20 minutes, someone can come in and your spot is safe. And that's the thing. There's a lot of guys. Look, if you go to Portugal, you could snatch. I know Manel Ferreira was a very good kid, 19 years old already, a starting player, both in the Lusitanos and Direito was one of the main teams in Portugal. But you need a direction. You need a staff that stays and has a heart with it. It can't be bigger than the team, and that I think there's a problem with De Jong and everyone else before. It's always bigger than the team, and you can't. And we did Cardiff. I have like 6 or 7 picks that I would make it a better team, but at the end of the season, or the end of the day, it's the project really. It's the direction. And it's a word that we repeat a lot. And when you see teams in the Pro League, you can find it. Even, let me give you an example. Johnny May went now to Soyo Angolem, which is a team that had a goal in the last 2 seasons to stay in the Pro League. This was the goal. The team they built and the players they signed was to stay in the Pro League, and they achieved it beautifully. Then you have other teams that have been packing up and consistently grown up, like Van, Béziers, Provence. I think Provence wanted to snag the title and send to the top 14 because you couldn't see it with the team North and all the other players, and they're going to announce 2 more big signings. And these are teams with programs, with projects. It's going to be for the next 3 years, 4 years. Let's see what happens. And with Cardiff, and that's the problem. Even with now with the Dragons, you can see the direction the team they're trying to build. It's a fun team. It's going to be a very fun team to watch. It's going to be a good place to be. And Cardiff, it seems they are just trying to, well, claying plot holes with clay, and with break with a bit of pressure. And that's a problem. But there's a lot of guys. I said you have even Ashvili and Matkava. Scrum half, it's a position in the men's Rugby Europe Championship you won't find. Well, we'll find Samuel Marks and Ukamash, but those guys are already in the product there, and it's hard to snag him. But residing in each country, it's difficult. You can find someone in the black line to fill the scrum half as a back, as a bench replacement, but is Cardiff going to lose 5,000 euros a month to pay a player to be on the bench? I don't think it is. And now if it was to me with Cardiff in my hands, I would say to the public, for the next 2 years, we're going to end in the bottom last or in the last 3 places, because we're going to rebuild a team that's all about the academy players and some older guys. And people should be patient, but I think with the situation in Welsh Rugby at the moment, it's impossible you have this type of discourse, because while someone will, at the end of the night, Armors Park will be in fires and flames and people chugging in chairs and flags and whatever. So it's a problem, and I think it's the direction the team wants to go.
And I feel like, in fairness, like Jockey's come out and said, both when he came on our pardon at the start of the season, that he did see this as a project and a rebuild, and that is what he's trying to do. He is trying to build this squad with a huge core of Cardiff-born players, and then he's trying to bring in a few experienced heads, basically just to replace the numbers of experience, the amount of experience we've lost over the last 2 seasons. So I think you're quite right. I think I saw Dan nodding along when you're talking about we could do with a little bit more physicality in the pack. I think that's something that's been an issue with Cardiff for as long as I've been a fan. You're right. I think a top international scrum half isn't going to be coming our way anytime soon for the sort of wages they command, especially when Pro D2 clubs have a bigger playing budget than the Welsh sides at the moment, which is a mad place to be in.
Listen, are you going to get a guy like this is not real, but are you going to get like Samuel Marks to bench Ellis Bevan, who is trying to become Cardiff's one of the main stars of the roster? That's a problem. So you have to get like a Gonçalo Bertarno that might not be angry going to the bench, but even that is hard. So you need 2 good scrum halves, and it's not an easy process to have in the team. But I think it always comes to the funding, because you don't have that budget to have a lot of players that are good options and are international stars.
I think what Francisco said is true. Like previously, we have had very little direction in terms of recruitment. I reckon. I'm trying to think when was the last real. I think probably since the last summer that Danny Wilson was here, so 2017. Recruitment has very much been haphazard, and we've ended up, particularly through COVID, then where you get these COVID contracts which have extended and extended and extended. We've been stuck with guys with the greatest respect to them, that we didn't want to be at the club. Ideally they would have moved on, but where they've extended their contracts through COVID to take pay cuts, we've sort of been stuck with it. I think this summer now is going to be the first time going into next season then that there's no one in that position at the club, I would say. And I think this is sort of like ground zero in that, and that they now need to build up their direction of travel, and I think Jockey's doing a decent job of that. But overseas signing strategy is going to be interesting because you want to get maximum money for your overseas players. You don't want to sign an overseas nine necessarily to sit on the bench, because they're going to be generally earning a bit more, because you've got to convince them to come to your club. You've got to convince them to shift their families and their lives over to another country. So striking that balance between not getting stuck with somebody and not putting too much money into one player, like taking Lopeti Tamani, for example, was great when he was on the pitch, but we paid him a lot of money to be injured quite a bit of the time there then as well. And so that's a lot of budget gone into somebody in the medical room. So that is going to be really tricky for Cardiff, deciding what they want to do, whilst also then not signing players who are going to block this next group of players coming through. Because I think if you think about a Cardiff squad in 3 to 5 years, it's ideally got all the young players who I mentioned earlier, Winnett, Mann, Martin, Evan Lloyd. They're all now the spine of your squad. They're senior internationals, and they're the guys who you call on for your big derbies and your big European games. And then under that is the current crop of senior academy players who are all 18, 19 now. There's a couple of real good players in there. Harley mentioned Steph Emmanuel earlier, Tom Bowen, a couple of the props, Dylan Barrett and Harrison Rock look like good prospects. Tom Howe at 16 is already playing under 18 international rugby. But so they've got to come through. And then all you're looking at then is probably 2 or 3 overseas players to just complement them in areas like second row and at tight head, where we don't produce many players in, not just in Cardiff, in Wales in that position. We've got just as people genetically, we just don't seem like to fit being 120 kilograms, 6'5" locks, or 130 kilogram massively powerful scrummaging tight heads. How few of those that we have is not necessarily a reflection on the development pathway, just more on like what is actually available to us as people. So that's where I think they've got to get to, and it's just about how you don't want to be signing players now who are going to block you getting to that, but you also want to sign some players now who will help you be somewhat competitive on the way there. So I don't envy the people doing the recruitment for us at the moment at all, juggling budgets and squad management and not really knowing what budgets are going to be in next season, let alone in 2 or 3 years. It's going to be interesting to see. I think it's an interesting time, but it could well be one that in hindsight we look back in 2 or 3 years and go, oh, actually we did do that wrong. But as things are at the moment, the decisions being made, I think you can understand the rationale behind them.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fair point. Just sort of going, I feel like we've sort of been quite serious and stuff. So I want to sort of lift this up to talk about some of our sort of more favourite moments through the season. Talk about some of the highs, best games, the best tries. I know we did our awards last week, which Colin unfortunately missed. I don't know if you heard who got what award.
No, I didn't actually. I generally got back on Monday night and I was busy yesterday, so I have no idea. So,
I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of them were shoo-ins, so unsurprisingly, Cam Winnett breakthrough player, because again, absolutely fantastic. As Dan alluded to, one of Wales' best players in the Six Nations as well. Belcher, and so here, Tinas to be a player of the year. Try of the year was Dan's pick because we had a tie, so we went for which
Maserati from 85 meters out, skinning 5 players.
Theo's pre-season try has been robbed there, I'm just saying. It's
I
one
Theo-
vote.
Theo-
found the clip and everything, but I don't know. People don't appreciate pre-season as much as they should. That's the problem.
It's a
I feel
disgrace.
the real robbery is Theo's third try against Ulster. Francisco, for you, so you sort of said your favourite was that tight narrow win over at Dave Parade. Any other bits that stood out for you?
Yeah, I forget to tell you something about the signings. There's something that makes it impossible for Welsh sides signing players like young kids. It's the damn Brexit thing. So for imagine a young guy with 17 years old wants to go to Cardiff to play to academy whatever from Netherlands. Let's say one of the props, which I know 2 or 3 that are very good. And for that to happen, when he's 18, he has to have a job or a contract, a full time, to receive what is a passport, a short-term passport. And I've been helping players to try to get to the UK, but it's almost bloody impossible. I can say that at least 2 international Portuguese players and 1 Georgian wanted to go to the URC teams in Britain, in Great Britain, and it's no avail because they're kids and they need something that sticks them in it. So it's a problem. And well, if I'm now going to your question, yeah, I would like to highlight, I think, Tinas De Beer, because a lot of people didn't fancy him, and I don't get why. I really like the guy. I think he's not going to be a Springbok, whatever, but he's a steady guy. He produces well enough, and I think my problem is, can Cardiff stay with him and Bevan for the next 2 years to create a team of scrum half and fly half to bridge something positive, because you need time between the 9 and the 10 and to bridge something. And as then said also, I think, well, your front row is not Cardiff's front row is not that bad, but it needs tuning. And maybe if a South African came in, so can you get a South African to come in, someone like Oxneche or something? Give him cake, give him the best pastries in all Cardiff, because I think if you stick with it 9-10, bring a new prop, a loose head, and let's say Vinashvili, yeah, you have. But going back, Tino Zubir for me is a highlight. I won't say Mason Grady because everyone already loves Mason Grady. He can be one of the great, one of future greats for kids for Wales. But as a lot of them, he needs time to rock his boat, because I've seen a lot of promise in these young kids with 20 years old, and then 10 years from now we go to Wikipedia. 40 games for Cardiff, 5 games for Wales, now plays in the Pro D, or at the time it's going to be called the Pro D3 or Pro D3 X or something, because it's going to be the alternate future. But and that's for me, well, the highlight of the season. And it's that. But let me just say something. I'm happy to have picked Cardiff, because if I was Scarlet, I wouldn't even survive that Black Lion defeat. Dragons are the dragons. They're cool logo, but I don't get why you don't have a dragon in the logo. You had a long time ago, but you should have a dragon in your, because it's a cool dragon. And Ospreys, come on, no, it's not. It's white and black. It's a Rugby funeral club. Please, no, we don't need that. And Harley, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I said we might not have got a South African prop, but we've got a South African forwards coach, so hopefully that he might give us
Cool.
get that maybe turn some of those solid scrums into penalty win scrums. I mean, arguably, I think our lineout's the one that needs to be improved a bit more drastically, although it was a lot better the second half of the season than the first half. So I think for me, I think one of my favourite moments has got to be that game against Bath. Yes, I know it's talking about yet another defeat, but the atmosphere, packed Cardiff Arms Park. I mean, I suppose the thing as a whole is of the 4 Welsh sides, our attendance increased, which bucked the trend. So it just showed how much belief fans had and how well the marketing team have done to try and get bums on seats or pack out the stands. So that's been great for me. The Bath game was excellent. I mean, I was a bit of a funny one because he was okay. The Reece Carey running into the post and bouncing off is still just I said if he knocked himself out, so I don't think I'd have found it so funny. But it was the fact that it was just like nothing had happened. It's a bit like when your toddler runs, just sort of tries to walk or run and then just falls flat on their face and gets back up and just the only acknowledgement they have of it is I hope no one was looking. So it was good fun. I mean it's been a great season. Sort of a bit more self-centered. I mean, doing this pod with you, Colin, and now Dan, now you've joined, has been pretty good. So getting a chance to talk to that and talk to Jockey and Griff's been quite good from the Cardiff front. I think it's been exciting because our attack looks good, apart from the last pass or the last two passes. So hopefully next season that's going to get. As I said, I think the longer that not just Bevan and De Beer, but Bevan, De Beer, Thomas, Grady, the longer you get that midfield working together, I think the better that's going to look. Gowan, did you give your
Yeah, it's sort of coming back to the De Beer thing. I'm probably been one of the strongest De Beer skeptics, certainly on this pod, has been. And he 100% won me over in some performances, and in other performances I wanted a bit more. I think what's been really interesting is how hard Cardiff fought to have him, and he clearly fits the vision that Jockey has, and there's a lot to be said for that. And also, what's going to be interesting going forward, no secret about it, Ben Thomas is going as second choice fly half for Wales this summer. So historically, when Warren Gatland says he wants to see someone in a position, you see them in that position in regions. What do Cardiff do next season? Probably fight back against that, because they're going to have to, because you look at the 12 options. I know it's, new signing and everything, but next season Ben Thomas is likely to be first choice 12 again. If not, then who? I was, someone that Harley praised a lot this season, Max Clark. I was surprised that perhaps he wasn't offered a bit of a deal. I don't know that he wasn't, or I don't know that if they could offer him a deal, but he would be someone that I'd like to have seen return if it was possible. But I think that's an interesting one going into next season, is that situation. The nines then as well. I am excited about that. I think if you want someone who's sort of 26 to 28, and then someone who's a young pup coming through. I think that's the process I'd like to see. One's probably going to come from overseas, and hopefully one from nearer to home. But yeah, in terms of highlights of the season, Boxing Day comes up high, partly because I was down west with my partner's grandfather for the first time, and in my literal first interaction with him was him going, "Dragons and terrible, aren't they?" And I was like, yes.
Getting on.
Before I said any words, I was like, here we go. We're going to be okay. It was pretty much the only interaction as well, because he's pretty much deaf at the moment. But that was a highlight for me, I think. And overall the season, I do, coming back to the original point, you've got to say some players have massively skyrocketed, and actually I was really chuffed with the performance Evan Lloyd put in on Judgment Day. Just that, like, a guy who has been vilified a lot this season, sadly, because if we're honest, he's probably put in a bit too soon to certain areas. But you can see the promise he's got and the prospect he's got as a player. And speaking of it, to some guys who know him very well, someone like Mason Graydon knows him very well. He was tearing up trees at youth level. He's going to tear up trees going forward. It's just about giving that opportunity, giving that time to learn how to play a different position, because that's what he's doing. But he looks like one hell of a prospect going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, did you want to pop in for a second there?
My personal favourite moment of the season, Racing away, January, great trip to Paris, drinking red wine on the Seine, classy. And then the La Défense Arena was just something out of this world. What a ground that is! Like it when you walk in there, it doesn't look real with the massive screen at the other end of it. But it was a good performance as well from Cardiff. Actually, I thought we would get absolutely blown away, but even threatened to come back into it a bit in the last 20 minutes, and then a bit of nightclubbing on the pitch. Then afterwards, throwing some shapes. Parisians absolutely shocked; they've never seen anything like it. But that's what happens when you're South Wales dance champion a couple of years in a row. But maybe I gave myself that award. And then my only other highlight of the season, then I've just written Rory Thornton's hair. I mean, it's just getting more like luxurious, illustrious. It's just, I just, how is it getting even better every game? I don't understand it, but good bit of jealousy, perhaps. I don't know, but
I don't know if it's controversial to say, but I feel like as his hair's getting better, he's getting better a player. And I've noticed the same thing's happening with Justin Tipuric. But I mean, he had with starting from a much higher ceiling.
Tipuric's is, I mean, purely in the hair state, he needs to get tips from Rory Thornton. I don't know what barber Rory Thornton's going to, but Tipuric needs the blow dry that Rory Thornton's getting here. Like, this is cutting edge analysis for this podcast, by the way. We should do like hair stuff more often. It's just unbelievable. But I've got a picture of Dan Thomas here as well. That is good hair.
Look, to be fair,
that is good hair. So are we now the best hair team in the league? That's potentially something we can cling to. Especially Faf came in even better. Obviously, yeah. Rory Jennings looks a bit like me, so naturally very good looking, great hair. And so if we got the top 3 hair blokes in the league, maybe we start on +8 for hair alone in each game next season, and then with the losing bonus point thing, we'll just win every game. So I've sorted it. I might pitch that to URC.
Yeah, absolutely. The only problem is when we play Ulster, because they do have Werner Koch, and for all his flaws, he does have a very good set of hair.
Is he signed for Ulster?
Werner Koch, yeah. Oh, it's been heavily rumoured for ages.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm sure it's been confirmed by now.
I saw he'd left the Sharks, but I didn't know he'd signed for Ulster.
Yeah.
Speaking of players who've left places, it's been announced Reece Patchell's left, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm just purely interested. I don't think it's likely to happen in any way, shape, or form. But would you take him back? Because I was just thinking about it as a really interesting one because of the situation with Sheedy, and you've now got Ben Thomas and Tinas. If that was on the cards, would you be interested? It's just one of those really weird scenarios where you almost feel like you're going to say no, even the quality of player that Reece is.
I'd say no personally. Not a slight on Patchell, but I think the only circumstance I say yes is if we almost signed him as a part player, part academy skills coach, because I think he'll be a great coach. Does a lot with Glentarv, and obviously some dodgy people have come from that school, but some good people too. Yes, I think if in that sense potentially, but I mean just purely in terms of do we need him now, I would say no. In that Jennings can play 10, Thomas can play 10. We've got Sheedy, we've got De Beer, Josh Thomas signed for the Rags. He'll be pretty full time, I think, in pre-season. Fullback wise, Winnett and Beetham and plenty of cover now. I think pre-signing Jennings, I did a thread about Liam Williams as well. I could have seen the rationale if you see Beetham more as a backup 12, and then you could almost sign Patchell then as a 15 and keep him out of the way of contact a bit more, and he can sort of control the game from there. But no, I don't think I would. I don't know where he goes though. I'm not sure what the next step is for him.
I think the rumours are all Japan, but I saw a lot of things about potentially Dragons, which would be interesting because that would mean the Dragons have a halfback pairing of ex-Cardiff players via the Scarlets with Dane Blacker as well.
Yes, yeah.
I said obviously. For me, I think the only way I'd be accepted for Reece Patchell is if you could look into a crystal ball and you could guarantee 100% he wouldn't get injured, because that was kind of hopefully why he was going to Super Rugby, whereas physicality isn't as big a thing for your 10. Whereas I think in the URC, I think Tinas De Beer's been our top jackler and quite up there on top tackles, because the direct running with a lot of teams in this league, they do like targeting the 10 channel a lot more. And you can't get away with doing a Cami Lopez and sort of stroking someone's shoulder as a tackle attempt
What was he doing?
Which has to be.
Have you seen it, Francisco? The Camille Lopez sort of star jump and he's fallen off somebody. What was he trying to do? Was he trying to block the inside pass, or was he just sort of like shitting out of it, basically?
Play touch rugby or it's not touch rugby, it's touch. Sorry, I don't know. Look, I have seen people do that in my lifetime, and I think it's a spur of the moment when you're desperate to stop a big man like that. You try something. Some go tackle to the feet. He tried to shoulder tap him and say, "You're it," and stagger it, and well, it didn't work because, of course, it was not going to work. But fair play to Camilo Lopez because for the ages we'll have a beautiful meme, and I think he's laughing at it at this moment.
That has to be top 5 worst tackles of all time, though, doesn't it?
Oh,
It really does. There are some bad ones. We talked about one pre-pod, but like
I said, I think that top 5. I think Nipper has 3 of them.
I'm not sure what you can describe Nipper used to do as tackling necessarily.
I think one of my favourite Nipper moments is the only time I've ever been to Liberty Stadium as it was back then, and is it George? And he just goes up to George North after the ball play's gone back up to the other end, and he just gives him the slightest push as if to sort of say, having it. And he goes further backwards than North moves sideways. And it's just like, Nipper. It's good effort. I've lost my train of thought now. So I'm not going to bother with the rating for the season. I think we can all say it was better than we expected in the context, but as four wins, 1 draw isn't where we'd like to be, particularly in the last couple of seasons. We've been sort of on that 50-50 mark. But I said, I mean, one of the things I said when I came on this pod to start off with was, I think what we needed was losing, make sure that we were in the fight and that we were picking up points whenever we can, and we did that. Without the wins. So how about looking forward to next season? So we've had our fixtures out. It's quite a favourable run. So Zebra, Scarlet's home and away, Dragons home, up till Christmas, up to Boxing Day, we've got 4 of the 5 derbies. Zebra at home, Ulster at home, Glasgow at home, Edinburgh away, I believe are our fixtures, and then obviously the European fixtures to come out after the draw on the 2nd of July. What do we think realistically would be a good return for us from that block?
Well, I can't remember what I said the other week when we did it, but I think if we beat Zebra, then I think we can win. I think I said 5 wins potentially up to the 6 Nations, because there's a couple of tricky ones in there, like playing the Sharks and that. Is it the Sharks or the Lions? This is the Sharks, isn't it? The last one before the 6 Nations. Yeah. And we'll do that without our internationals, so that'll be tricky where they're already in camp. But there's some close games there with Glasgow home in there. There's Ulster home in there as well, I think, in that run.
Yeah, Ulster home. That is the week before the autumn internationals, which could be an interesting one.
Yeah, but it's the. Am I right in saying that we won't lose our internationals for that one? Because is it the week before it's 2 weeks before the first game, though, is it? Is that right?
I think it's the first game, because the first game is that first weekend of November, and this is the last weekend of October, I believe. So they might pick him up early for the squad, but hopefully not.
No, so we're playing our first game of the autumn internationals on the 10th. So that first weekend of November is a blank week. So we'll have everybody for Ulster. And then also, obviously, Ireland teams, they've announced this week, they're taking an emerging Ireland team to South Africa, I think, in October, aren't they? So I don't know if that'll impact our game against Ulster at all. But
that actually could be quite interesting, given with Richie Murphy, who's obviously taken over as Ulster coach.
He was the 20s.
He's very much gone into the I'm going to develop young players route.
Yeah.
Because of Ulster's financial trouble. So, yeah, that could be an interesting one. I think absolute definite we have to beat Scarlets at home. It's been too long now, and I'm getting fed up of the Turks mocking us.
Yeah,
because they're absolute. Because they're happy to be absolute shambles for the rest of the season as long as they can beat us, or at least or pull it together for one more game than we did, and then think they've got some sort of moral high ground. So I think for me, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 home games in the first 8 rounds. That goes up to 6 if you count New Year's Day against the Ospreys, and then Sharks at home as well.
I have a question for
I'm
Francisco.
looking for
About the European draw. They've announced the Challenge Cup teams today, but they've left a gap for 2 invited clubs. Who would you like to see invited?
Well, by merit, I think the Black Lion. Well, Black Lion is not on the fixtures, right?
No, it's only the top 14 URC and Premiership teams they've put down at the moment,
Okay,
and they're going to confirm 2 clubs before the draw.
I'm 100% sure that's going to be one of them, the Black Lion, because it makes sense. They won the previous Super Cup, and the only thought that might not be there right now, it's because of the ongoing political situation in Georgia, which can, well, we hope it doesn't descend even further down to hell, because it's halfway to that at the moment. It's hard because the other second team will be the Tel Aviv Heat. I'm not thinking because they're a fully pro team with a lot of stars. Some of them are in the MLR playing at the moment, so they will be the team most fit to play in the Challenge Cup. I think the Black Lion next season might win more than one game. It depends the pool stage they fall into. They signed some very good players. They lost Elias Pandarashvili to the Predator, and I think they're going to lose Luka Matkava, which is going to make a dent in terms of their playing style. But the other team has to be the Heat, Tel Aviv Heat. Forget about Portugal. The Lusitans are not ready for this, and if they go in, it might be the wrong direction, because all their hopes and concentration is on the men's Rugby Europe Championship 2025, which is going to decide who's going to the World Cup. The same goes for the Spanish, because I'm not seeing the Spanish doing that gamble, but I think in 2-3 years they might prepare something, and then you have no other team. This is the problem. I don't know who they're going to invite. Maybe the Cheetahs. The Cheetahs not in the fixers, right?
No.
I think the Cheetahs really deserve it. It's a team that even without a strong competition like the URC, when they play in the Challenge Cup, they really show something. And I think it's going to be the 2, Black Lion, the Cheetahs, because of the situation in Israel. It's going to be difficult to have Tel Aviv Heat in it, and there's a lot of doubts, because if they play in January, February, it's going to almost overlap the season, the beginning of season, the MLR. So it's not easy. It's not an easy thing, but I think it's going to be the Black Lion because they truly deserve it. I don't know what Cochrane is going to change in the setup, but it's going to be a very, very interesting side, as they signed Georgi Tsitskaridze, Georgia international starter, Chachinadze, and Kakovin might sign with them. So it's going to be a stronger pack. They might lose someone in the back line, but it's going to be sure. I'm sure 100% the Black Lion and the Cheetahs.
Sorry, just quickly, just confirmed. Obviously, I must have missed that. So Richard Cockle is head coach of the national team and for Black Lion as well.
He is both.
Okay.
I think he's both, because the problem with him, and nowadays I can say this, is when he was signing with them, the doubt was if he was going to also assimilate the Black Lion setup, or he was just going to be like consultant. I know. I think he's going to be one of the head coach or one of the selectors, and that's it. Because the Black Lion it's the Georgia national team without the guys that playing abroad. So for me, it makes sense them playing with it, and it's a fully pro side. They are fully pro, and they are ready to to play in the Challenge Cup. So with Cockrell with it and with more experienced side, I think they're going to do better than next season.
So let's hope we don't have Black Lion.
Yeah,
Let's have the grudge match against Scarlets. They can go out to Tbilisi.
I don't think anyone, like, if you're looking at the draw, I don't think there'd be a club in any of the top 14 URC or Premiership clubs who would want to go to Tbilisi to play the Black Lion there. Like, having seen the game out there, was it Clermont who went out there? And I think
they played both games in France. It was Gloucester who went to
Gloucester. That was it. Yeah. That didn't look like, obviously it looked great as a spectacle, but if I was Gloucester, I'd be like, no, thank you. I don't want that.
And Gloucester didn't have like a full packed stadium in that match, because if they had in Tbilisi is hell. The fans deliver, and it pumps up the Black Lion squad. So I hope Cardiff is not going to Georgia for a pool stage game. I hope.
I said if one of the Welsh sides are going there for a run, again, I don't hope it's not Cardiff, but I would be very tempted to go on the away trip there, just because I really do want to go see a rugby match in Tbilisi. Might have to ask the wife if I can cash in one of my good dad chips for a weekend away in the Rugby Europe Championship or something. I said I don't think you gave an answer on what you thought would be a good season for this first block. So Dan said about 5 wins. I reckon 8. I reckon 6. I think is. I don't think it's realistic, but I'd very much like 6.
I don't see 6. I see equaling or +1 to the whole of this season, which is 4 or 5. So I think that is achievable. You look at those games, Zebra, and with all due respect, they massively improved at the start of this season, but it still has to be at home. You have to look at Zebra as a win. Like that's just a non-negotiable. And Cardiff would be thinking the same thing, that it has to be a win. Scarlets away, I remember, as much as I joked about it, I remember going to that pre-season game and thinking, oh, Scarlet squad looks good this season. It could be quite good. And Cardiff took them apart. And I was quite stunned about that and thought, okay, hold on. Cardiff might be able to do the double over Scarlets and be one of the best of the regions. And I ended up going the other way with Scarlets doing the double over Cardiff. So I think looking ahead to next season, that's still a very winnable game down in Parc Scarlets, and the home game, Glasgow's probably a stretch. Although anyone's a win at home. Then you go further down, and you're looking at your Dragons games. Banker, I suppose.
10 points sorted.
No, it's probably not as much of a banker this season, losing to what Francisco was talking about earlier with Dragons making some really nice signings, and I think they could be a bit more of. Let's be honest, I'd be really glad to see it from a neutral perspective, but looking at it from Dragons, it'd be nice to see finally having all that promise come reality. Because I remember last season they were talking about having 4 of their first 5 games at home. Let's win a couple of these, and it just didn't materialize. And it's that's also why I'm a little bit reluctant to go let's get 4 of our first 5 wins because we've got X amount at home, because Dragons did the same and it didn't pay off. So I also look at games, but there aren't any of those games I look at and think that's not winnable. Even Glasgow, I think, is the toughest one. Edinburgh away, I still stand by. I don't think Edinburgh are a good side, but Edinburgh away is always a tough task, and they do seem to be getting better. Although they were dry as a backboard to begin with, but I do think 4 or 5 wins is achievable come New Year's Day. It's just getting that over the line, isn't it? And I think you get that Zebra win and you get that Scarlets win, and then I think dominoes might fall further on. But if you don't win either of those first 2 games, then could be a long season.
Yeah,
here we go.
For me,
I couldn't end it on a positive, could I? I had to end it on a negative.
I said this is the reason we had to get down on, because both of us will just end up in negative feedback, like spiraling down to see you can be more negative. And Dan's already picked us up. I mean, the reason I was saying I think we really need to focus on getting this end of 2024 block and get as many wins as possible there is just because looking at the away fixture. So we've already alluded to, we've got the Sharks just before Six Nations. Then in the Six Nations, we've got Connacht and Leinster away. I can guarantee it'll be the one game that Andy Farrell releases. They'll be the teams Andy Farrell releases players back to. Then we've got the Lions at home, straight after the Six Nations, which is usually when any of our decent players are injured. And then it's Benetton away, who and that's a really sticky game now because Benetton are a very good side at home. Then we've got Judgment Day against the Ospreys, which has just not been a happy for us. Finish off home game against Munster. Now we've been winning, if not very close to winning, every time we've had Munster at home, so that's a little bit better. But then we end going against the Bulls and the Stormers, which I think is possibly the worst possible two fixtures for ending a season on.
It is a joke, though, isn't it? That all four are ending out in South Africa. Like, it is like bona fide joke. I genuinely can't believe it that they've managed to sort it in that way. I don't know why it's fallen that way, but it is absolutely ridiculous.
If I was one of those cynics who says the URC is completely anti-Welsh, I'd say it's so that the South African sides could pick up some wins and bonus points to make sure they get up into the top 8.
Don't start because no conspiracy here.
It seems almost to me more of a thing of that's when you want fans to be watching, and perhaps they've looked at viewers. I wonder if that's played a part of it. I do wonder, but maybe not. Maybe that's also me being a bit cynical and not knowing what's playing a part. But I would be surprised if it's not playing a part.
Yeah, that's it. One nice thing is our last home game is in April, which because in the last few seasons our last home game seems to have ended up in like March, whatever. It's that is quite nice. I think again we're still too heavily balanced one way or the other, but that's what they are. I think if you've got to accommodate around going to South Africa for 2 weeks as a block, and the South African sides all have to, they're trying to do their tours in stints of 3 or 4 weeks. So anyway,
can I just say our last home game will actually be the 2nd or 3rd of May when we play the Challenge Cup semi-final and batter somebody in that. Omen, we went to South Africa between the semi-final and the final in 2018. So I'd just like to be the first to congratulate Cardiff on winning next season's Challenge Cup. 3rd time lucky. Let's go.
It is our competition. We just let other teams play it sometimes.
Might just draw a 3rd star on now, just quickly.
Surely, that's the thing. Yeah. So that's an interesting topic discussion. Obviously, so the Champions Cup, they've got the stars. What should we have for Challenge Cups? No, it used to be the Parker Pen Shield, so I feel like we should just have like a load of pens, almost like a pocket protector style thing.
It's something naff like half a moon, isn't it? Like you get a full moon if you've won twice. You get like so we're on 1 moon. Even better, just a photo of Rupert Moon. So just like
over the badge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I said I wasn't sure for the Challenge Cup because they have been talking about doing neutral semi-finals for the European game competitions as well, which could be an interesting one. But I feel that's a discussion for a pod close to the time, or it might be something like they only do the Champions Cup.
Yeah, I think it's home semi-finals or still in the Challenge Cup, isn't it? They don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Even it's not even like home country, is it? You just play them at home.
Yeah, I think it's as long as you can get 15,000. I think. Or was that? No, actually, no. That's just Champions Cup, isn't it? 15,
we played Power Home in 2018, and we're definitely not 15,000 at the Arms Park.
Yeah. So does anyone have anything else you want to say to wrap up the season, or just in general? Francisco promised us a Jamie story.
Oh, you want to hear the tale of Sir Jamie, the Dragon Knight? Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, do you want? Well,
yes, please go.
Well, I was going to write something about it, like writing, but because I had some other content to do to other places. I'm not going to be arrogant and say where, but let's try. So Sir Jamie is a very patient man. He waited in a hill to another day to come in. His dragon was dead, but his love will forever be not dead. It's not a good rhyme, but this is a story of rhymes. It's the story of a man that keeps fighting for the dragon, fighting with some of the worst Twitter accounts I have seen in my life. Harley knows who I'm talking about. But he keeps fighting with that. Well, I won't say boldness is not a critic and it's not a negative trait. I think people who are bold are either very strong people or very humble, and Jamie is both. But now that, and this is the story of Sir Jamie, that next season he's going to be on the playoffs with the Dragons, looking down to us Cardiff fans, the Ospreys, and the other red team that has no name but has a dragon on its logo. This is his tale. He's a good man, Jamie, and well, his team didn't lose against Black Line, not like Hughes, so he doesn't deserve any bashing.
There you go, Jamie. So Francisco has spoken. You will be a top 8 playoff team now. But we don't make the rules. That's just how it works.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Right?
With that,
if it doesn't happen, I'm going to the Arms Park and I'll pay you all 2 beers, whatever the cost. Whatever the cost.
I'll take that.
That sounds good. Sounds good for the champion for our Challenge Cup semi-final, isn't it, Dan?
That's a good shout, actually.
So with that, I think that's a good place as any to end it. Thank you so much for listening to us, not just tonight, but for the whole season. That was our first season as a podcast, done and dusted. We will try and have a few bits, get some special guests over the summer, but it's been a long old season, so it probably won't be a week, but it won't guarantee to be weekly episodes. But we will be back fresh and ready to go for another season of Cardiff Rugby. Thank you very much, Francisco, for coming on and sharing your pain with us in this group therapy session. If you're not already following Francisco and reading his work, I highly recommend it. It is excellent. We'll share links out with all the things. Thank you, Carwyn and Dan, for joining me on this adventure. Carwyn, you've been on the pod longer than that. I don't know how I've ended up as the host of this. I think you just didn't want to.
I was going to mention earlier as the only original OG of the pod, and then I was like, can't pull off OG. Told once by my music teacher I couldn't.
The original grump. I think OG, original grump in these cases. And once again, thank you all for listening. Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.